podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Some of the topics are addiction, fear, faith, self-compassion, relationships, codependency, emotional intelligence, and more. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
For everything I am, for everything I am not, I love me at my best and at my worst. I love me. Smiling, frowning, laughing, playing, screaming, crying, pounding. I am always grace, no matter what face I wear. You are my reflection, and I am yours. I love me for the sake of loving, for the honor and appreciation. I feel and experience, fully embracing all of me. For in receiving all I am, in every precious moment, nothing gets wasted. All of me remains whole and perfect, held in the universal heart where the love, which is always embracing me, the love, which is everywhere and endless, allows space for my grace to grow and know itself fully once again. I am so grateful. I am extended the gift of my friendship so I can dance into the beauty I truly am. Poem by Morgine Jurdan. In this episode, Valeria Teles interviews Morgine Jurdan on unconditional love as a road to wellness and thoughts in between. Morgine celebrates love's magic in her incredible love of nature, life, all that is, source, God through her writing, photography, animal and nature communication, mentoring, and more. Morgine is writing books. The first one, Exaltations of Love, sharing her many experiences of divine, unconditional love and how it inspires a different perspective of life and everything and everyone around us. This one thing has been the main focus of Morgine's life since childhood and has changed her life more than anything else. Communicating professionally with animals the past 20 plus years also served to increase her passion, as animals are incredible role models for unconditional love. Here is the interview with Morgine Jurdan.
In your own words, who is Morgine Jurdan?
Well, in my own words, I preface it by saying this is my own truth. I don't like to say that I'm advocating any certain truth. I'm just my own person living my own unique way of life. And I see myself as an extension of source, God, and energy, creation. There's some universal force that I see inhabits every form of life, that beats our heart, that keeps us breathing, that allows humans to talk and communicate, and every apple tree to grow uniquely. So I am an extension of that energy, whatever we want to call it. And I'm living in a human form, and I chose the name Morgine, but I am part of everything. that part of that oneness.
Wonderful. Thank you. Before we begin talking about unconditional love and the divine God, please tell me, what is love to you?
Love to me is the most powerful force in the universe. It's, for me, the foundation from which everything originated. And love to me is unconditional. So if I love you unconditionally, yeah, like I love my partner, there's nothing you can do that's going to get me to stop loving you. You can hate, you can kill someone, you can do horrible things, but I'll still love you because to me, love is what heals. If you're uncomfortable, if you're sick, if you're angry, if you are so cut off from who you really are that you are in a lot of pain or rage or anger, what you need is love. You don't need my hatred, my judgment, and my hatred, judgment, anger all cuts off my bodily functions. If I'm really at rage at you or hate you, then my breathing is more shallow. It's harder for my heart to beat. And all my functions are closed down. So I don't want to go there. So I love without conditions because I think that's what true love is about. Most people, I would say, that could say 51%, but a lot of people love with conditions. So they love you as long as you meet these conditions. You do this and this and this. But if you hurt me or if you hurt somebody else or if you do something or rob a bank or something, I can't love you anymore. So for me, real love is without conditions. I think that's the way source or God or nature loves me. My animals love me without conditions.
Right. Would you say that God is connected to love, the love you speak of?
Yeah, I use that term loosely because it's a term people know, but I don't associate God with the God that lived in my family when I was a child and you went to church. So I also use the word source or great mystery or the universe, terms that anybody uses to mean that energy behind all things. And I think that love, like when I get a cut and my body heals itself, I don't have to think about it. It just knows how to heal itself, or I get a burn or a broken bone. To me, that's love. Love is doing that. When you feel really bad and you go take a walk in nature, everybody tells you, many people say, go take a walk. You need a walk. Go take a walk. And nature is unconditional love. It's bathing you in unconditional love. That's why it clears your mind. That's why you feel better. That's why a lot of people, they go on vacation, they go to nature because it's so soothing.
Right. So true. Why do you think so many people love conditionally?
I think it's just their upbringing. I think that in the world that we live in, I know that, many of my friends and me, when I grew up as a child, my parents, liked everybody, no matter your nationality. But, I went to church, and when I was young, we had a fire and brimstone minister. And then when I got in about teenage years, we got a wonderful young minister who was the first white person on the Black Congress in LA after the LA riots, that were taught, these are the good people, these are the bad people, this is safe to do, this isn't safe to do. So you're sort of taught that way. And I was never taught growing up by my parents or by my religion or my school to love myself. In fact, even today when my friends, I have conversations, deep conversations, and I talk about loving myself unconditionally, that I have to love myself first before I can really love somebody else. People say some people say it's a sin to love yourself. And to me, in my life, I don't see how I can really love you, Valeria, if I don't love myself first, because then I don't understand what it is. Like, how can I teach Spanish if I don't understand Spanish and don't know how to speak it?
Right. True. So true. When did you find out that you were capable of loving unconditionally? Was there a moment or a situation, specific situation?
Not that I can remember. I know when I look back, my friends, when I finally figured out my purpose in life, which is to role model unconditional love, and be a source of that in the world. When I grew up, I was always wanting everybody to get along. I didn't want people to fight and argue. Now, only 2 years ago, I watched a documentary called Sensitive the untold story. And I sat there and cried because things I've been trying to change for, 68, I'm now 70, but 68 years of my life, I couldn't change. I'm a highly sensitive person. It's in my genes. And it's also in the same percentage. It's 15 to 20% of humans and animals and insects in unrelated studies. So I don't know if that had something to do with it too, but I went to the bully in our neighborhood who was just like in the movies. He weighed, I don't know, he was a big heavy guy about twice my size and everything, and knocked on his door, scared to death because I wanted to talk to him and get him to stop fighting other people. I didn't like people to fight, and I wanted everybody to get along. So that was in me from my childhood. And then when I left, church per se, because I didn't understand how you could bless soldiers to go out and fight and kill other people, it didn't make sense to me. But Corinthians 13 in the Bible, which says, you could have everything in the world and be the most knowledgeable person, have all the riches or give everything away, and you don't have love, you're nothing. I mean, it really, said it to me right there that whole passage speaks about unconditional love and that it is the most powerful thing in the world. And so I always kept that with me, and I've seen that in many other texts, that love is the force that's healing, that makes plants grow in the middle of pollution and heals things we thought were not healable, instantaneous healings and all sorts of things like that. I think that love to me is behind that. Love's behind nature. It's growing and growing no matter how much we've devastated it and hurt it and harmed it, that it loves us without conditions. So that the weather, as I understand it, for the beings that I've read and everything, is something we co-create with our minds and stuff. It's not nature being angry at us,
Right. It sounds like almost like a pursuit or a wish, a desire to see the world a better place or people, better people, that we try to, that we talk about, that we want to feel better about the world and people. So we believe and we pursue unconditional love. Would you say that by trying to change the world and people, isn't it like the same as not accepting things that they are, life is as it is?
Yeah, because if being unconditionally loving, my aim was not to change anybody. I accept everybody. I celebrate our differences because I've been there. I, for years thought I was unconditionally loving, but I meditate every day. And then in meditation, I'd hear about how I was judging myself or how I was judging somebody else. Because if you have an experience with somebody, like especially a family member, or a friend, and you know who you think who they are. And every time they call and you interact with them, you have this picture painted in your mind of who they are. Now, I don't believe that God's source, they see you through the eyes of unconditional love. It's divinely perfect, as everything you want to be at your highest level. And so, I try to see everybody at that level when I interact with them, that I am, I expect their highest self to come out without an attachment to outcome of whether it comes out or not. But every moment is new to me. When somebody interacts with me, I try not to see them as I saw them yesterday or how I've always known them, because I think that we all change. We're all changing every day. I could have an incredible epiphany and not be the same person I was tomorrow when you call me. And so, I even learned that in my animal communication class. One of the first things the teacher taught us is that you need to see an animal as a blank slate, like you know nothing about them. Because if you assume they're angry or mad, then that's all you're going to get back from them. You're not going to get what's really going on.
But sometimes they are. It's reality. People are in a state of mind, a state of being that's out of balance. But it's just what is. For some reason, I connect unconditional love, a love, to accepting everything as it is. No judgment, no assumptions, no expectations, no deluding myself, no illusions, which is really hard to do. But I believe also in practice. And I thought, because we talked earlier, I think off record, about changing people, and the only thing we can do is to change ourselves. But I don't know. I think that sometimes we've got to accept ourselves exactly how we are without trying to change in order to love ourselves unconditionally.
Well, I agree that I have to accept myself. I totally agree with that. I'm just saying I'm also accepting the other person, whether you ask me about what if the other person is angry or they don't agree with me or they're complaining about something. I'm in accepting. I'm looking for appreciating them. I use that word instead of gratitude. I appreciate where they are because I've probably been there. I think that unconditional love makes me know that whatever it is, I have been there for all one, and if I've lived many lifetimes, I've had that experience where I'm lost, where I'm confused, where I'm angry, where, I've been suicidal several times in my life. So I can understand when somebody, is tired of living this life. I mean, I get it. So I accept them. I don't judge them. I just embrace them with my love. And I strive to create a field of unconditional love around me so that it's an unconscious thing that I'm embracing people with that energy. So sometimes that tends to make them relax more automatically, where I'm not trying to change them, but I'm embracing them with a feeling of safety. For instance, if you meditate and animals come around, or you look at an animal and you're meditating, you're just, fully in the moment. Animals feel very safe. They feel totally at ease in ways that they don't when your mind's full of stuff. So if I'm, in the presence of somebody who's angry, upsetting or something, and I am just totally at peace with them and just loving them, they can usually feel that. They can usually experience that, and their whole demeanor might change. That's not my intention. I'm not trying to make them change, but it's just like, I've had several friends pay all the money to go have a session with the Dalai Lama when he comes to Portland. And they wait in this long line and they can ask one question. And everybody says they never ask their question. They get in there and sit on the chair and they start crying. They all tell me the same thing because they've never been in the presence of so much love in their life. And they're just melted and bathed in love, and they usually never get their question out.
Right, right. That makes sense to me. Yeah.
So they can feel that, people can just feel the love that emanates from that man. And then nobody has ever sat with them except maybe an animal and just loved them so fully. And sometimes they're just changed from that 1 5-minute session.
Yeah. So going back to the nature of being, unconditional love, perhaps just it can only be expressed by the presence of it, right, in us. I don't think we can communicate with words or like we already talked about trying to change it, because everything goes back to our own desire to change. We're programmed. We have been through a lot in this lifetime that have changed the way we see the world, and we have created too many beliefs. Now, we talked about this off record too. Do you think it's possible to live without beliefs?
That's an interesting question. I don't think so. I think that at least me, in the past few months, I've discovered in my meditation all sorts of beliefs that were unconscious to me, that I had, that were running in the background that I wasn't even aware of, that I would certainly not claim because I tell people not to have them.
Right.
What I meditation, when God or all it is goes, yesterday when you were doing this, it said, what belief was going on? I go, shit. you know, so, so, I think that we're all evolving, and that's why I'm so compassionate of everybody in the world. And that we're all going through this process, but I think we're programmed. I mean, you ask me like, why do you think? I think that in some ways, religion, other things that are in our lives sometimes condition us, and it all depends what culture we're raised in. What, even in the United States, if you're born in the north, south, east, and west, there's totally different ways of looking at life. And I think that this hard time we're going through right now started. I mean, I read a book by John Taylor Gatto, who was a one Teacher of the Year award for New York twice, and then he was fired. And he wrote some books. The first one I read was The Underground History of American Education. an intimate investigation into the prison of our modern schooling. And he pointed out something very important, which I didn't realize but made total sense to me. When the Industrial Revolution came around, all of a sudden, all these people of all these companies realized, here we got mass producing cars and we can mass produce furniture and clothes and everything. And because we still do it today. So we need people who are non thinkers, people who will come to work every single day and do the same thing day in and day out, who will never question authority, who work for low wages. So overnight, around the world, the school systems changed. And now we have rows. You sit in rows, you face forward with your hands on your desk. You ask the teacher for permission for anything. Now, I'm 7 years old. When I was 17 years old and I had to raise my hand in class because I had 2 tampons in and a pad and it was leaking down my leg, and I had to tell the teacher that I needed to go to the bathroom, I was pissed off, Valeria. I'm 7 years old. I should not have to ask permission to go to the bathroom. And when I studied eye health, I found that eye health really changed when they changed these school systems, because you're forced, instead of looking around the room and looking all over and up and down, you're forced to face ahead and stare at the chalkboard, which is not good for your eyes. But anyway, when they started creating these people, just think about it. Common sense would tell you that going down in a coal mine is not good for your health. Common sense would tell you working in a factory where all these noises are, or these poisonous things coming out of these chemical vats, that my husband used to work in places like that, is not good for you. Or working in a factory sewing clothes where there's 5 stories of people inside the building and only one door to get out, so it burns down and everybody, but your common sense would tell you not to do that. But when the schools changed, people lost this. They were taught not to trust their intuition. Do not trust your intuition. Trust what we say. And then after several years, they found out, as he said in this book, that maybe they could market to people because they trust the authority figure. So then they started these marketing campaigns with the authority kind of figure who was selling you products. So that whole change around the world changed not only, the religious thing, it took away our gut feeling, when you thought something was that you shouldn't do something, it removed that. So I think kids are getting sick and tired of that in schools today, and they don't want to, I think the autism and stuff, they don't want people to tell them what to do and not to use their creativity and not to follow their own heart. So, it was a very insightful thing when I read that book, because when he started to teach and let kids and be inspired by what they're passionate about, was when he was fired after he got 2 awards for being Teacher of the Year. And so then he began investigating, why won't they let me do this stuff? And so it was a very educational thing for me. It made sense to me why my parents went to school for me, because I lived outside the box, And we had to go to school for our kids in high school for both our kids, and ended up in the principal's office. And, like my son was A plus, A minus, B plus student. And he got a D in his report card in physical education. And he always showed up. He got A's on all his tests, but the teacher was only grading you on physical acuity, how many baskets you could make in a row, how many perfect times you could tip the volleyball over the net. So there's all sorts of things that we don't know that really affect us on an unconscious level. If you're in that class and you don't have parents who are coming to school for you, you think that you're stupid or bad because you can't do those things. And it just affects your whole persona. So I am so empathetic for people. So I think unconditional love is just, I was born to live that way, because I've had so many experiences with myself and with my children and with friends that I can see where people develop their attitudes, their judgments, their fears, in ways that they don't know how they were conditioned or brainwashed or to think certain ways, because people don't trust their intuition. And to me, it's a God-given thing. It's my thing that tells me, I shouldn't do that. I mean, I had a horrible fall last year, and I was holding all this stuff to go to the kitchen, holding some jars to put in the refrigerator. And I had gotten this little stool out. And I heard this voice say, "Put the stool away." And I said, "I will, just a minute, but I need to put this stuff in the refrigerator first." And took one step and fell over the stool and slammed onto a tile floor. Injured myself for a year. But there was that voice telling me to move the stool.
Yeah.
certain way. We know, right, exactly what to do, but for some reason we don't. But you just mentioned the large scale of wanting to control minds, control people, change and manipulate. So I guess there's a lot of money to be made, advantages, but we see that within ourselves too. It's the same thing. I don't see any difference, like you, me, or anyone trying to change anybody else around us instead of letting them be themselves. Even our own, I'm not a mother, you're a mother. So I can imagine how hard it is just not try to change your own children and control them.
I know. It was our kids used to tell their friends, we couldn't do anything wrong. It's just my kids wanted to be rock stars. They went through that phase. I can't remember whether it was Kiss, whoever was popular then. We took them to the music store and showed them the guitars and how much they cost and how much tickets cost to England. And just like, okay, here, this is what it's going to cost. Here's what you have to do. We did, they would lose interest once they we didn't say no to them. My daughter went to this phase of wearing all these black and white clothes, and my mother would send checks for Christmas and she'd buy these clothes, and then 2 years later she's like, I can't believe you let me wear these things.
Right.
I said, well, you wanted them. Well, I hate them now. And you're just like, but we didn't try to form them into who we thought they should be.
Right. Great. That's beautiful and really hard to do. Like,
Oh, it's drastically hard. I mean, our kids were so loving and everything. I mean, they taught them to love animals. In Iowa, they each had a milking goat. They wanted a milking goat. And they had to milk it twice a day. In Iowa winters and clean it out and everything. But we move out here and life's different, and you just like that. We came home one day and our daughter had bleached her hair all the way down the middle.
oh my God.
Now we had never ever that was the wildest thing she had ever done. It was just like, but I was taken aback, and I said, why didn't you tell me you were going to do this? I didn't care that she did it, but I was just so shocked. But I didn't make her wrong. I didn't tell her she should do it and don't do it again, because if you make your kids dress the way you want them to dress, and somebody I had friends and they said, how can you let your daughter go to school that way? I said, if I forced her to dress in the clothes I wanted her to dress in, she would feel uncomfortable all day long. I said, is your daughter on the honors roll? And they said, no. I said, well, my daughter is. And I said, so I let her dress the way she wants to dress because she feels good that way.
Yeah. I like that a lot.
I hated when my mother made me wear those black and white shoes, saddle shoes, whatever they were called. I hated them. I wanted to take them off and be barefoot at school.
Right. That doesn't help, right? With self love, loving ourselves, wearing that stuff.
No, it doesn't. When you think the whole world is judging you the way you look.
You speak about intuition and how we have lost this ability to know who we are and what we really want out of life, our purpose in life, because we're not listening to our hearts, our intuition. So you might connect intuition to self-knowledge, because it's hard to know, like, what are our beliefs, what is really our intuition, unless you are doing the work of self-discovery and self-knowledge. So what is to know oneself, Morgine?
For me, to know myself is to know who I really am, who I authentically am. Like I told you, only 2 years ago, I watched that documentary because I grew up and people frequently told me, you don't have to be so sensitive. You don't have to cry about it. Lights don't bother anybody else. What's your problem? So for all these different kinds of things, I'm sensitive to lights. I've never attended a concert or anything. I avoided malls with the plague when my mother would take me with my sister to get clothes. I'd choose my clothes really quick and say, can I go sit in the car until you're done? And I didn't know why, but I was told, my whole life that it was, that I needed to get tougher. I can't stand any form of violence. I haven't had TV for 25 years and I rarely watch movies. I was trying to change myself for 68 years to be tougher, to be stronger, to not cry so easily, I have all the sounds turned off on my computer except the error sound. And I have lights that flash in my house that I have covered up with black tape. Well, I wasn't being my authentic self. Now I see them as my powers. I see them as, who I really am. And I think that when you're really who you really are, you're more powerful. So my intuition comes into that is that gets back to love. When I'm loving somebody, when I really love my children, or I love a friend, or I love in nature, my body I describe it as being open. I'm happy. I feel good. I'm energized doing what I love, like writing or outside taking photographs. I love when I am angry, when I'm judgmental, when I am in fear, when I'm in rage. My body physically changes. My muscles get tight. It's harder for me to breathe. It's harder for my blood to pump. So my whole body, every function in my body starts closing down. And we describe when you're open as ease and relaxed. When you are tense and tight like that, that's where the word disease comes from. Dis-ease, the opposite of ease. You're all tensed up. So if you have an argument with somebody for 10 minutes, you usually feel really fatigued afterwards. You have to sit down and rest. And actually, a 10 or 15-minute argument can take you a day to get your body back to the way it was. Now, if you carry that anger around all day, or like some people, they're angry politically nowadays, and you carry it around for days or weeks or months, you can get a disease because it's harder for your body to function in that way. You are holding your body tense. If you held your fist tense for an hour, you couldn't even hold it tense for an hour, but you're doing that to your body. So when you're at ease is when you make good decisions, when you're thinking clearly. If it was a nice sunny day and you were out in the park and then something upset you and you were really angry about something, you're having a fight with somebody, I come up and I go, Valeria, here's a gift. You go, leave me alone, right? I mean, you don't want to, and if somebody asked you to make an important decision right then, wouldn't be a good time to make a good decision.
Right. True.
But if it's a nice day and the sun's out and you're just having the best time with friends and I come and give you a present, you go, oh, thank you. And if I ask you about a decision, you're going to be clear. So I think that God, all that is, whatever it is, created our body to tell us when we're out of balance, when we're in balance. So I know people who go and make a decision, think about something and then second guessing themselves, and they make the decision and it turns out to be the wrong decision or not a beneficial decision. There's no such thing as a wrong one that's not one they wish they had made. And they go, gosh, I had that gut feeling that I shouldn't have done that. People say that. I have that gut feeling, or you have that heart feeling. There's that guidance inside you that feels good, that's totally at peace. When you're totally at peace, that's when you make a decision. You think about making the decision. If you stay totally at peace, then you're usually going in the right way. It's all, I learned how to use a dowsing tool, dowsing rods. I learned how to use a pendulum. I learned how to do muscle testing, where in reality now my body is a dowsing tool. My body just tells me. I know I can pick a book up off a shelf and say, is this beneficial to me or not? Do I just need to read 2 pages or do I need to buy the whole book? My body tells me because it's my God-given system, but it didn't happen overnight. I had to learn how to do all those other things. And then I eventually began to feel it in my body or hear the answer. And I still meditate because there's those hidden things I don't,
Oh, yes.
it's still hidden from me that, I journal afterwards. I go, oh, I'm still doing that.
Yes. I love the way you talk about self-knowledge connected to listening to the body. Just pay attention, right? Because the body won't lie. It really doesn't lie. Some people, they say just flow with life, we have to stop with the concepts of methods, like meditation, for example. It's really a good method, and sometimes I used to, but very rarely now. I just let not just my body, but also the circumstances, the people I meet, and everything that's happening to tell me what life is about. Like the moment, being in the moment really might be what it is. If you are in the moment, I don't think we need methods anymore. Then we are done with them, because the moment, life itself, it's happening now, becomes your method to understand life.
Yeah, well, I try to live in the moment all the time. I mean, I do but we all, somebody, some people who have a really fast mind, not meditation might not work. There's a lot of ways to, slow down your thinking because there's usually not any time when we're quiet except when we're sleeping. So, I'm a highly sensitive person, so I like meditation. But in meditation, I was guided to set my timer for every 30 minutes.
I like that. Right.
And I did it for like 3 or 4 weeks, and every time the timer went off, all I was to do was go, "Am I in the moment?" That's all I was supposed to do, ask, "Am I in the moment or not?" And so it got me to be more and more in the moment, because I'd recognize when I wasn't, with what I was doing. I wasn't present. So to me, the only moment we can live and be alive is the present moment. If we're thinking about yesterday or tomorrow or somebody we're angry about or something we have to do when we're home, we're missing the present moment because that's the only place you can be alive. When you're in your mind, I mean, that's where animals live, in the present moment. I used to teach animal communication classes, and I'd take people through this exercise and have them close their eyes and focus on their breathing, then focus on their clothes, focus on their hair, focus on the chair, what their feet felt like, whether they had shoes on or not, and on and on and on, and engage all their senses until I, got everything I could think of. And then I said to multiply that by 100 times because that's what the animals are all the time. They are 5,000 times more present than we are. And that's where they live. So you don't miss anything because like you said, there is no, every day is a precious moment because it's never going to be lived again. The sunset you see is never going to be the other sunset. The person that you're with, like I'll tell you a very funny story. The first time I started hearing spirit, and I used to go to junkyards with my partner because we'd have to pull parts out of cars, to fix our car because he can fix anything. So you can imagine, get sort of dirty there. And you go in the bathroom, and he went in the bathroom first. And this bathroom is like, a guy's bathroom. It's, unisex, but, there's grease on the sink. You want to hover on the toilet just to give you the idea, and people work on cars and come and wash their hands in there. So he goes out to the car, and I'm washing my hands, and all of a sudden God talks to me, like answers this question I've had for like 2 months. I just hear this voice as clear as a bell, and tears are running down me, and so I get all clean, and I get in our old Willie's Jeep, and we start driving home, and I haven't said anything. I'm just sitting there. Now, my partner's very intuitive, and he just looked at me and goes, "So what happened in that bathroom?" He just knew something happened. I said, "Well, his voice talked to me." But I mean, you never know when that's going to happen. It's, going to happen in church, or I'm just like, but I clearly remember the first time I heard that voice so clearly. And you just, when you're open, when you're ready to hear that inner guidance, like I used to, originally, I would just journal and journal and journal, sometimes with my other hand. Then I get messages, and for myself, many of my poems that I write just are channeled things that are to myself, that are messages about what I'm learning, about how I'm growing, and other viewpoints that I'm not aware of. And animals taught me a lot. Oh my God, they're like so unconditionally loving. My partner's dog one time says, "I can tell you what your problem is." I said, "What? You're still doing this and this and this?" I said, "Oh, I gave that up a long time ago. I don't think you're right." And like 2 weeks later, boom. And I walked into his dog who slept at his feet. And I go, "You're right, Duke. I did it. I did it. Thanks so much."
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't have experience with animals the way you do. I'm just wondering if I'm a lot more interested in people. I'm just wondering the difference, like in the experience of knowing oneself deeply, if it's the same, like dealing with people or dealing with animals, understanding them. Do you find it to be the same kind of experience?
No, well, animals don't like that. Animals don't have deep thoughts about themselves. They can know about you because they're watching you 24 hours a day. And because, I learned to be a communicator, I can sometimes get, deeper messages. But they are very present with life. They're very unconditioned. Like you can tell your dog you're going to take a walk every day and you don't, and they don't hold grudges. Like, "Why didn't you take me for a walk yesterday?" I mean, they're so present. They're just, I have a friend who made these cards and nobody wanted to carry them in stores because he was so ahead of his time. The one for today says, nature is a consistent example of life without attachment to ideas. It just doesn't, there's no attachment to anything. They're just unconditionally loving and they're present to whatever's happening. And if you don't take them for a walk, well, they go, well, maybe later today. Well, maybe tomorrow. But they are affected by their environment. So my teacher told us, which I never planned to be an animal communicator, not in your life. But I had two dogs that were fighting about once a week and, biting each other's ear or whatever. And one was my daughter's dog who she had taken away to live with her. But when she moved back to Portland, he couldn't stand the walking on the street with cars because where we live, there's no sidewalks and he'd never experienced that. So he came back and we had a young dog. And of course, the young dog, this is my house, and the old dog, well, I've lived here for 10 years. So a book fell in my hand. To make the long story short, it said animal talk. I didn't know you could talk to animals. And then I went and took a class and I got the dogs to stop fighting, put all my stuff away in the closet, and people started calling me because my teacher wasn't doing animal communication for a while. And, I ended up, taking more and more classes. I didn't know that they were such unconditionally loving beings, but my teacher told us that most of the time we'd be coaching people and not coaching animals. And that turned out to be very true, because if the animal lives in a stressful household, they're going to pick up the stress of their environment, just like if you have a stressful workplace or, whatever it is. So a lot of times they pick up what's going on in their environment just naturally. So there are animals just like humans. Like I learned to be really peaceful and I can go in any chaotic environment. It doesn't bother anymore. So there are certain animals that just ignore what's going on, but there are ones that are more sensitive that are totally affected by people's arguments or hatred or something like that. And they can get sick and diseases or have behavior problems that are totally a result of what's going on in the home. So I have to coach people without knowing they're being coached, because can you talk my dog to stop biting or we're going to have to put him to sleep? No, I can't,
Wow. Oh, I love that idea. So in a sense, because we're talking about the ego mind, it's really hard to go through the mind, right? The mind separates everything, the duality. Like you're saying, if you're training people through their pets, that it's easier that way.
Yeah, it's not easy for me. I didn't know I did. I took like 6 or 7 coaching classes, Ayurvedic, inspirational, spiritual, just like all these different kinds of, shorter kind of coaching classes. But people call up and so I would ask a lady, is anything going on in your life? No. Does anything happen? Anything, major? No. And then finally, after 20 minutes, she says, oh yeah, my dad died last week. And of course, she's experienced this grief, and the dog's like totally freaked out because suddenly this happy person is sad all day and crying. So the dog doesn't know if she's upset with her or what's going on. And, I have to sort of try to coach her. What do you think that you could tell the animal, tell your dog that your dad died and you're upset and it's okay that you cry, so I have to coach the people in order to help the animal. I tell the animal, but once I'm off the phone, they're back into the atmosphere of what's happening. And so I have to help the people understand that they're affecting the animal without making it their fault.
You wrote something else that I found to be very interesting, and I have a follow-up question. You said you are perfect and divine as you are in this moment. So how can someone believe in something like this when they are aware of the flaws, basically the flaws of their nature as humans and their negative responses to life's challenges and etc.? How is it possible to teach somebody or to guide them to understand that they are already perfect as they are?
Okay, so they're wanting to know, because I mean I can't convince somebody who, is brought up in the standard school, church, whatever, that it's how I see them through the eyes of unconditional love. But if you're guiding someone, I mean, I have to teach them as I understand unconditional love is. So if I love you without conditions, There are no conditions that you must meet. There's nothing you must do to have my love. That means you've never made a mistake. You've never done anything wrong. You're not bad. You're not evil. You've never failed at anything, because none of those words make sense to me, because I just see you as a spirit that's learning and growing. Like when a child learns how to walk, we don't go, get up, stupid. How many times is it going to take you to learn how to walk? We don't do that. It takes time for the child to learn how to walk. It takes time for the child to learn how to eat without spilling their food all over, how to drink, how to get dressed. We don't pick on them for those things, because it's just natural that you're going to make mistakes growing up. When you learn how to write, learn how to read, that is true for your entire life. But you learn and you're indoctrinated like parents, because they're so indoctrinated in the system. They figure if they can punish a child enough and instill enough fear, they'll be good. And I have known people who've gone through our prison system, and our prison system compared to Europe and everything else is just like they try to make you feel as horrible and stupid and dumb and evil as possible, figuring that somehow that's going to make you a better citizen when you get out, and they give you your clothes and no money until you don't get in trouble. So if a person is punished, like I was punished when I grew up, or, I remember my mother, she was a loving person, but one time she found me taking a dime out of my dad's pocket that was hanging there. I reached in his pocket, and she told me she could never trust me again. Well, I'm 70 years old, and I somehow remember that my mother could never trust me again because I was so young when that happened. So I think that, telling the person and helping them understand the way I think that spirit or God or divinity sees us as precious, like that energy, that being that created everything, and it just loves everything, no matter its size. The little nematodes in the soil, the things we can't see. It loves everything because it knew that we're going to grow up and we're going to fail. We're going to fall down and get up and fall down and go up. We're going to do things that are dumb, like me falling over that stool. When I heard the voice, say, boom, the stool, honey. I know what's going to happen next. It doesn't because making fun of us and judging us and punishing us doesn't teach us anything except how to be more afraid of making a mistake. There are no mistakes. You don't make mistakes. You just go, oh, I don't think I want to do that again. I think the next time I'm going to do it this way. Like when you're learning how to walk, you go, okay, that didn't work. Let's try this. Oh, that didn't work. You're learning how to put stuff in a spoon, and you learn how you tilt the spoon and how, okay, everything fell over. Let's try this, Our whole life is that way. We never stop learning. We never stop growing ever, in my mind. And so that's what I try to show somebody, to know that they're precious and divine and loved unconditionally. If I'm teaching and they want to know why I'm so happy and peaceful no matter what's going on, even politics now, you can't get me upset, that I see everybody through that lens, through the lens of unconditional love.
Right. I'm just wondering how we can learn this earlier. Like I learned when I was 38, 37. I started to learn.
Well, you'd have to teach the parents. I think that we fail in this country. I love indigenous cultures where the children around the campfire from the time they're babies, listening to everybody talk about life. But my mother was a nice mother. My mother was raised, she had 3 older brothers, the youngest of which was 7 years older than her. And my father was raised by all women because his father died in the Spanish-American War when he was 3. In my mother's house, they didn't listen to music, no dancing, no card games, no movies, nothing. So when I was pregnant, my mother didn't tell me anything. She didn't tell me what to expect. She didn't tell me about colicking. Nothing. I had no education except what I read in books. And I think that when we raise kids just not knowing anything, when we haven't talked to anybody, we're afraid to ask people. We get this information from Dr. Spock, like he's God, I mean, it's just sad. And I think that it starts, I would like to teach self-love to kids, some of the books that I'm writing, I don't want a write child's book on how to love yourself. I mean, and in this one class, I still remember it. We learned how to, and I can't remember, it's too many years ago, but we learned how to love ourselves. It was a, how to love yourself class, a simple little, one day workshop thing, And this lady was a teacher, and she taught like kindergarten or first grade. And one of the kids said to her, how come you weren't here, Mondays? And she said, well, I was taking this class. Let me tell you about this class. So she just decided to teach her students what she'd learned in class. All of a sudden, in the next few months, her kids were exceeding their grade level. Everything, reading, writing, just went through the roof because she came back. We were meeting once a month. We were a group. She said, I can't believe it changed my students, so I'd love to teach self-love from kindergarten, because you're so more self-confident when you're loving yourself than if you're judging yourself. You were afraid of failing. You don't know if you're going to do it right. What are your friends going to think about you? When you let go of all that and you love yourself, you see everybody else differently. All of a sudden, everybody around you looks differently, because when somebody makes what you used to consider a mistake or says something negative, you say, oh, I used to do that. Oh, yeah, I remember that. I was that there too. Somebody cuts me off on the freeway. I never get mad anymore. I go, I probably cut off people hundreds of times and I didn't even know it. I just didn't look well enough, or they were in my blind spot. I mean, just stop being angry, because it's not good for you health wise, and you're not a role model for what real love is like. And I really think that real love is without conditions, because most people are going around, I love you if you do this and this and this, but if you look at another woman, I can't love you anymore. If you don't take out the garbage every week, I'm not loving you anymore. We put all these conditions on our children and other people.
Yeah, I wish it was that simple. Just teach children how to love unconditionally and self-love.
It is. I mean, it's not that difficult. It's just that because of the system, we have to change our school system. We have to change our thinking. And just by saying it's difficult, you create that reality, and you don't want to me, I'm just speaking for me. I'm not out here to change the world because it's broken and it needs fixing. I gave up that idea a long time ago, but I can inspire through my writings and sharing my stuff, ideas. I can write books about how to love yourself that little kids might read, that might inspire them to love themselves, or might inspire people who are ready to look at themselves differently when they got up and read the mirror, look in the mirror and see themselves differently. But if I go at it that the world is broken and it needs fixing, then I'm totally not unconditionally loving. I'm not in the moment. I'm not being peace with what is. Being at peace with what is like you were saying, is the cornerstone. I had to do that with my weight. I didn't realize I haven't been sick for years, but I've had a weight issue since I was told I was fat when I was 10, and put on diets and punished and all this other kind of stuff. And so I didn't realize that I had that image of myself since I was a child. I married somebody who was skinny, and I was bullied by my family. If you really loved yourself, you'd lose weight. I was on diets for 60 years until I gave up. But and suicidal because I couldn't lose weight. But I was unconsciously thinking that I was a bad person because I couldn't lose weight, and it was an unconscious thought that I had. So I'm so empathetic that we get that. I heard an actor, and I wish I could remember his name, but anyway, he's very famous, and he was being interviewed, and he's been in dozens and dozens and dozens of movies, and they said that it must be really easy to learn your lines now, and after all these years. And he said, no, it's still very hard. And the guy said, why? And he said, well, when I was, in my teens, it says my father said something to me that just stuck, and I can never get it out of my mind. I said, what do you say? He said, well, never open your mouth and show people how stupid you really are. Now, there's something that, what, I don't know what the situation was, but here's an actor who could not let go of that phrase his father told him, when he was in teenager, and here he is, 60 years old. So, we all have that stuff. I'm so empathetic because we all have those little things that are holding us back. So I think that the only thing for me is like I can be a role model for it. And somebody might come to me and say, how can you be at peace with the political system that's going on? I want to know how you do that. And so then I, explain to them where I'm coming from, and help them if they want to. But I don't go around telling them they shouldn't be angry or you shouldn't because I'm not gonna, my one of my favorite T-shirts that said I refuse to should on myself or anyone else anymore. Or another one that said, "Take my advice, I'm not using it."
Right, that's a funny one.
So I think that I could be a role model. And one of my teachers said, never answer a question that hasn't been asked. And even in my Seth group, people, go, oh, because they're trying to, why can't I get my family doesn't want to read these books? I kept trying to enlighten them, but they won't get it, and I go, do you like the religious people who knock on your door and try to convert you? No. Do you like those people calling you on the phone trying to sell you things that you don't want to buy? No. I said, so why are you trying to sell your books to your family when they're not interested? Oh, we get really happy about learning something, but when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. We've heard that. So I'm just here for people who, say, how can you be peaceful? Because I have a lot of friends who I can see from my unconditional loving pace are hurting their health because of the political things going on in this country. They are enraged all the time. They're just they live with this anger in their body, and I'm not belittling them. I just, have to wait until if they ask me, how come you're not upset? I don't have TV. I don't watch the news, and I'm still alive at 70 years old, Somehow I always know when somebody tells me there's an earthquake. And, when the fire was going last year and it was 30 minutes from my sister's house, somebody told me about the fires. So I went on in line and I would Google the fires every day to see how close it got to my sister. That's about as much as I care about the news. I read the goodnewsnetwork.org, goodnewsnetwork.org. I Googled one day, Valeria, is there any good news in the world today? That's what I Googled. Is there any good news in the world today? No, and I just you can just sit there and cry yourself going to sleep at the wonderful things that are happening around the world that you never hear in the news.
Yes. Now it will make the news.
Hundreds of stories. It's just you feel good, you never hear it in the news because they, don't want to make you happy.
Well, they say an agenda, right? There's something that they are looking for, whatever that is.
Yes. But at the beginning, at least, I don't know if it's the same because I haven't had TV, but they used to, at the beginning, they tell you give you a juicy tidbit of a happy story that they'd save till the end of the news. So you can watch all the sad, horrible stuff, and then they'll tell you this last little happy thing,
That's interesting you make this point because I was always curious to know why people get themselves into this habit of watching the news with all this negativity. I was just wondering why.
Well, I have never understood until recently. A friend sent me these articles about our brain, and I don't think there is time, everything simultaneously, but we live in this particular 3D dimension that has time, so we can talk about time. So in our early development, let's say we're back at the prehistoric time or the early times in our lives, we had to be on guard for wild animals, for all sorts of stuff. It was very important for our survival to be aware of the dangerous things that could hurt us, and it could be a fire, it could be an animal, it could be another situation. It just we had to be aware and on guard. That was our most important thing because there wasn't other technology that we have today. So we were aware of negative things. So we still have that habit in our brain until we change it, that we think we have to know what's going on in the news in case we need to do something about it.
Right. Also, there's the fear mechanism, of the survival.
Yeah, it's the fear mechanism. I had somebody call me. I don't know if I told you. I don't think I told you. I had somebody call me. I live rurally, so people don't know, no sidewalks up where I live by Mount St. Helens. They were trying to sell me a surveillance system for my house. And I said, I don't need it. And the lady said, no. I said, I create my own reality, so nobody's ever going to break into my house. Okay. Period. He said, oh, and I'm sure signing up, telling your friends what a really weird person I was.
Right. I can imagine.
Yeah. Einstein said there was one question virtually no one asked themselves, but the answer to which defines how they experience their entire life. Do you believe you live in a friendly universe or not? So if you think it's a dog eat dog world and you have to take care of yourself and you're afraid of somebody robbing you and all this other kind of stuff, that's the world you're going to live in. If you believe that you are an aspect of the divine, that you're an extension of the divine created to love and have fun and enjoy, and that you always imagine the best in everybody that comes to you without an attachment to outcomes, you're going to live in a different world.
But it's interesting, Morgine, that what I have been observing, like in my own existence, is that there is also that aspect, that level where we call it spiritual. You have this deep understanding about life. I don't know how much we can really bypass the body itself and everything that we've been through, like for millions of years. All the survival, the fear, for example. Like I can never get rid of fear. I can sense the fear. I'm just not afraid, but it's still there. I know it's there. I'm aware it's there. And I see a lot of aspects of my life that's guided by the ancestors. It's very interesting. So I just watch everything, fascinated with the body, how much weight it has in our reality. It still makes us live in a certain way.
Well, I think that's because we live, without getting into esoterics. It's hard to get into esoterics and do we create our own reality and what that all is. But when you live in the 3D world and you have a physical body, you tend to react to everything. You react to food, you react to people instead of responding from your inside out. So what I understood is, when I meditate every day and I connect with the divine, I feel that. I can feel that in my body, that connection, that my body just feels loved. And it took a while to get there. That didn't happen overnight. But when I'm in that space, when I get in fear, if I just stop and connect with that love inside myself, I'm no longer afraid. Because that inner wisdom says that, my guidance isn't guiding me that anything's wrong. It's my habitual thinking. When I get angry at somebody or angry at something, I connect with that divine. I go, oh, that was just my habitual thinking. That's just my programming. Now I was programmed to react that way every time my mother says that. But really, my mother has dementia and she doesn't even know what she's saying. I've had to tell friends who took care of their parents, I'd have to work with them and say, look, your mother is in another world. You cannot take seriously what she says, because they're feeling so angry and they hate their mother and they hate, we have these arguments and it's just all useless. I said, just pretend your mother came from another planet and she doesn't understand you. And you just have to love her no matter what she says because you go through this mental thing where your parent isn't there. They seem like they're conscious of you. They say all sorts of things they've never said before. And if you take that's a good example. I mean, people say things like my partner one time, this guy yelled some horrible thing at him in the morning at work. And he was talking to another guy and he said, how come you don't get mad? And Jerry says, because I don't think that he means it. He said, well, I think he meant it, and later on that same guy came by and said, I'm sorry, I lost my father last night and I'm just not my normal self. And Jerry says, it's okay. I mean, you just get to, that it just becomes like you say, it's inside, when you can tell when something's wrong with somebody and they really don't mean what they say when they say something at you that way. They're upset about something else and they're taking their anger on you because you're a safe person to take an anger out.
Not living as a person as much, right? Taking things personally all the time.
Right. That's what I'm saying. You're going inside because your intuition, your body knows your. To me, I'm only speaking for myself, but my God self, my source self is connected to everything and everyone in the entire universe. So it is better than any computer. So it knows already what's happening with you, even though you're not telling me. So like, I'll give you an example of a dog. There was this dog, and I'm forgetting the name of the book right now. But anyway, this man had to, J. Allen Boone. And anyway, this man had to take care of this dog because he was a valuable dog. He was a famous dog. He was a German Shepherd, and he was in movies and everything else. And his friends had to go on vacation for a month. But they couldn't leave the dog with a care. They needed somebody who was going to watch him because somebody would try to steal him. So the man had to take him everywhere. So he was going to meet his friend for lunch, and he explained that, he had to bring the dog. His friend said, fine, he was head of this big company. So he got there about 20 minutes early, and he's sitting in the office. And there's one that came out and go to the bathroom and came back, and the dog's going "Brrr" when the guy goes by. And so his friend came out to get something from his desk, and he says, I need to ask you a question. He says, yeah. He says, that guy with the black hair, are you doing some kind of business with him? And he says, yeah, why? He says, well, I don't know why, but this dog's really smart, and he didn't like that guy. Just thought I'd tell you. I don't know what it means, but he growled when he went by. It turned out that guy was trying to swindle him out of hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow. Is that a true story?
Now, yes, it's a true story. It's a true story. The guy, told the whole story to him. So what I'm saying is, when you're using all your senses, when you're present in the moment, using all your senses, when you're talking to somebody, and your mind isn't going a million miles an hour, you haven't assumed to know what that person is thinking or what kind of person they are, or who you think they are, then that intuition is working. You can feel that they're actually in pain, or you can feel whatever's going on. My partner and I go, okay, what's bothering you? Nothing. I go, honey, okay, because you get to feel and sense what's really, we are each God in my mind. And when we're using all our senses like that animal did, that animal could feel there was something wrong in that man, that he was, he didn't know, he probably couldn't tell me what he was doing, but that guy walking by, when he's going to swindle this guy, he's not feeling normal and balanced. The dog goes, I don't feel safe around that guy. Get me out of here, man. So he knew something was wrong. So when you are tuned in all your senses, like when I'm teaching that animal communication class, when you're tuned to all those senses, instinctively when you're in the present moment. You just know. You don't need somebody to tell you. You don't automatically, like Jerry. He didn't get mad at that guy. The guy said, well, I think that he meant that. And he said, I don't think he meant it. I mean, intuitively, that's how he inspected, because he had a teacher, he said, how can you can come here and look at 100 pieces and pick the one part out? He said, I got to inspect all the other pieces and there's nothing wrong with them, but the part that's wrong. He said, it drives me crazy. He says, I can feel it, so you learn to feel. So when you start to do something that doesn't feel good, you go, okay, it's not right. This is not, you have that sense. And I think it's been taught out of us, like when they changed the schools and you were taught to follow authority, not trust your own inner wisdom, all this kind of stuff. And even when you go to the church, you're taught, to most churches, to believe what they say. They are your connection to God. You are born in sin and you have to spend your life learning to be this perfect person. First, there's 30 years of Jesus. They don't know where he went or what he did, but who cares, But I mean, you just don't know. We're all different. You bring up the Bible. How many religions are based on the Bible that have totally different beliefs? They totally interpret the same book. Some it's the First Testament. Today the people who are still translating the Bible have all these updates because they're learning more how to translate that language. We're sorry, but this didn't mean this. It means this. Oh, there's all sorts of parts of the Bible that are fake. This part in Matthew and Mark, so-and-so, a fake person wrote that, we should throw it away. One of those was women should stay at home and be mothers. That was one of the fake parts of the Bible. But do they ever update it and take it out? No, but people believe that is the word of God. And I laughed. I laughed myself silly because this lady says, how come you're so happy? And I said, well, I read these books. Was channeled by this being named Seth, and I explained what channel was. She said, I don't think my church would let me read those books. And I looked at her and I said, do you know the Bible's a channeled book? I said, none of those people lived when Jesus was alive. They channeled God. And she says, oh, give me the book. She said,
all right. That's funny.
But it's all, I just use that book because it's all interpreted in so many different ways. And so we all have, we got how many, 7 billion people. We all have these beliefs, and they're like glasses, and we're wearing them our entire life. And that's how we see the world, through these beliefs. This is a good person. This is a bad person. I can't trust black people. I can't trust these people. Whatever it is, that's the way we define our lives. And until we wake up to the fact, well, maybe this isn't true. My minister, who was like that first white person on the Black Council, He grew up in the South. Nobody ever said mean things about Black people. They didn't dissuade them. But in where he lived, he never saw them teaching at school. They never saw, they were just doing menial labor and housework and that kind of stuff. So when he just assumed that they couldn't learn, that they couldn't read, they couldn't write. That was an assumption he made, but it was unconscious. So he said he went to college and his first roommate was this Black man. And he sat there on the bed, said, "How did you get here? You people can't learn how to read." He said it was just a wake up call to me. Well, in his mind, he's going through this. So he he says it was a whole education for me in 24 hours of something that I grew up assuming that had no it wasn't valid, but I assumed it by the way I lived, where I lived. There weren't any of these people that required an intelligence and a reading ability. They didn't hold any of those positions. So we can grow up with these assumptions, whether we get it from the Bible or our parents or somebody else, that have no validity or no truth. And we're seeing the whole world through those filters. And we're unconscious that we do it. That's why it's hard, because I'm sure there's certain things that I'm still unconscious about. I'm not perfect, but I journal and I meditate to try to uncover those things so that I can, release one more thing that is not holding me back. But I think I love myself unconditionally, so I don't, do that. That, like I wrote, that one of my favorite things I wrote was "I am the magic and the birds singing," and it says I'm everything.
I really admire, absolutely love the way you bring things to basics. Just unconditional love. Love, it's common sense.
Do you know Louise Hay?
Yes, yes.
So, her exercise, when we first got her book, Jerry said that he thought that was the only affirmation in the entire book. I love and approve of myself. Because we were looking up ailments, and I'd read the affirmation. Is that the only affirmation in the whole book? I said, no, but I think it must be the one you're working on. But she had to, do mirror work. She said it was the most powerful work. And let me tell you, when you look in that mirror and say, I love and approve of myself, until you believe it, it was very hard, to say I love and approve myself, that I really love until I felt it in my whole body. You can say it all day, but doing it in the mirror until you believe it is like a whole different experience. It's very powerful. It starts with each of us loving ourselves until we, see, because I'll just give one last example for you. I'm not upset about the political scene. Before the current person was elected as president, I was very familiar with narcissism. I had to help a friend because she was physically endangering herself and she asked for help. She had all these physical ailments because she hated this woman who was a good friend of hers and had the bank where she banked, and she, took all this money from her on her credit card and all this stuff. And she hated her every day. And I found out she was a narcissist. And I had to explain to my friend, I said, look, they tell lies all the time and they believe their lies. There's nothing you can do to convince them otherwise. They are the most important person in their life. They have no empathy for other people. I went through the list. I said, this is who they are. I said, it's a mental illness. I said, some people when they're young, I said, if they know they have these tendencies, they might get help. But I said, there's no drugs and there's nothing you can do. And you are physically hurting yourself every day, hurting her, hating her. So, I turned her life around because she had to let go. So I knew that of the person who's president now. They are a severe case of a narcissist. They have a mental illness. Donald has a mental illness. And people get, well, my son says that's the most demeaning way you can call it. And he said in the Senate, they refer to men as Mr. Smith and whatever. And when they address a woman in Senate, they address her by her first name. So he said, I call him Donald. Donald is a narcissist. And, people make fun of him. They get enraged. They scream and yell. And it's not going to do them any good. It just makes them sick. It just makes them headaches, stomach aches. They can't do their work well. They yell at their kids because they're short-tempered. And there's nothing you can do. The man does not have empathy. He tells lies all the time because he's a narcissist. He has a mental illness. If he was autistic, if he had a stutter, if he was in a wheelchair, would we be making fun of him every day? No. But he has a mental illness, and we elected somebody who has a mental illness. And makes the whole country angry, part of the country who doesn't like him. And it's such a waste of energy. I love him because I want him whole and heal again so he doesn't have that problem, so his empathy can come back. And I don't do that by hating the man. You don't change anybody by hating them or judging them or making them wrong. You just don't help them the way I look at life. I just say that because so many people who are friends of mine are ruining their life by getting angry with their
They go crazy by it.
families, fight with each other, friends yell at each other at the restaurant. It's just like it's got so it's sadly amusing. That's what I example. That's when you react to something instead of respond. I'm responding because I have empathy and I understand he has a mental illness and my anger isn't going to help him change. We need to just elect somebody else to the office, but it's like you're understanding whoever your friend is. Look, I understand him because I go, he's a narcissist. It's just total, and everything he's doing. Look at all the list of qualities. Go up, Google narcissism. You go, okay, he does that and he does. I mean, they lose all their friends. I go, how many people? I told my friend the other day, I said, how many people in his original office are still working for him that he had in there? I said, not very many. They've all left. So it's just like understanding. I told her she had to understand her friend. I said, your friend calls you because she doesn't have any friends. She says, I got to buy 2 dogs. And they were like $500 each. I can't make my payment to you this month, which was like $120. I just like, so now she's a totally different person, my friend. She healed, I don't know, 10 different things in her life because she's not hating this lady every day.
Yeah, I think we didn't mention the word ignorance, but it's basically it, like not knowing who you are. It's actually normal too not to know, right? Like we have been talking, like at some point we didn't know either at different levels. We are not narcissistic. Maybe we were a little bit, maybe we are not at that point, but it's ignorance. We all know what that is.
Well, when I grew up, my parents didn't know I was highly sensitive, neither did I. I'm sure I drove them crazy. Like, what is wrong with you? Why are you upset? I'm sure that they didn't know. It's just, to me, everybody, the last thing I'll say is, to me, everybody's God. Everybody is a God in training. Everybody I meet is God in human, wearing a human thing. So wherever you go, there you are. I think that's the name of a book. Wherever you go, there you are. So every person I look at, no matter who they are, no matter if there's a shooting at a school, I bless everybody. I bless everybody, the people who died, the people who were left, the shooter. I bless everybody with unconditional love. I have a prayer every day where I bless every particle of creation in this dimension and all dimensions because I don't want to miss anything. When I eat an apple, there are millions of things that had to happen for that apple to get to my hand. The person who created the seed, the people who planted it, who grew the trees, the butterflies, the bees having orgasm with the pollen, the rain, the sun, people picking it and transporting it. I mean, there's millions of things that had to happen for that apple to grow and me to eat it. And I don't want to miss anything. So I know there's people over the world who are helping me every day live the life I do with every product I have, with all the food I eat. And I don't want to miss anything. So I said everything unconditional love every day.
This kind of understanding, it's what we wish everyone would do quickly, but it doesn't happen that quick. So we have to be patient, which is part of love too. Being patient.
Well, I think that having compassion, Valeria, increases your ability to love, because without contrast, you wouldn't understand that. You wouldn't understand how beautiful love is and how it can change your life without being exposed to hate and anger and resentment and stuff. You wouldn't know. You need the contrast in order to experience anything. We wouldn't know what appreciate light without darkness.
Yeah, I agree. So I wanted to ask you a question about non-duality. This is something even difficult to talk about it, because in order to talk about non-duality, you have to use dualistic kind of concepts, like you just said. In order to know love, we need to know what hate is.
I think that part of non-duality to me is being at peace with what is. Okay, so you're not on either side of the fence. You're just being at peace with whatever, if you're heavy, if your friend yelled at you, if whatever it is, you're at peace with what is to a certain extent. But I think that, like, I have emotions. Like, I can't say that, that I hear something, somebody tells me something. Like, let's say, my friend told me that the children were separated from their parents, the migrant people. Okay. So I can't say that that doesn't anger me. And I think of the children and I think of the whole situation, but I am here to feel my emotions, but it doesn't stay with me. I feel it and I'm angry and I say, well, I send love. I stop and I said unconditional love to all the people who are going through that experience, the parents and the children. You're strong and you're going to make it through this and it's going to be okay. And, and everybody who's involved, in this whole situation. And I don't carry those emotions, or they taught me something, but I don't like hold on to them. Like, if the thing is, it's holding on to things that keeps us in the duality. Like, if you eat some apple pie and you're sitting outside and you and I are talking, then you're going on, and we're going inside and we're doing like all these other things. You're not focused on that apple pie. It's gone. Like, you're on to your next thing. But we have something, that upsets us or irritates us, and it just like we're holding on to it. Like, my teacher said, life is a golf game. You hit the ball, drag Harry. You've got this big thing he called Harry, or your golf bag, and you put all your stuff in it and you're dragging it along, and it gets heavier and heavier and heavier in your life. And you can let it go. You don't have to, it's not serving you. You can just like let it go, because whatever you need to remember in the moment is always there for you if you trust it is. But, I think the exposure to all this stuff is to let us, have a deeper appreciation of who we are. I don't know, Neil Donald Walsh.
Yeah.
He had this book, The Littlest Angel, whatever, something. And anyway, it was a children's book that he wrote. And this little angel was having a conversation with God, and he wanted to know about himself. And he said, I want to know myself as the light I am, or something like that. And he said, well, in order to do that, you'd have to experience darkness. And he said, well, how do I do that? And he said, well, I have to incarnate, but you something will happen so that it'll have to, so you can have this experience of forgiveness. And so some angel comes out and says, I'll help you do that. I can't remember the whole story, but, he says, well, but he says, what? He says, and he has a chest of clothes there. He said, I have to dress up. It's something, be somebody else, and I'll do something really mean to you so you can forgive me. And he says, oh, you'll do me? I can have that experience. He says, yeah. But he said, there's one thing you have to remember. And he says, what? Anything? I'll do anything. I want to have an experience like that. He says, you have to remember who we really are, because if we don't remember who we are, then we'll have to go along until somebody reminds us who we really are again. And I have mailed that child's book. It's a picture book to adults to remind them of that. It's a simple story, but we're all here angels. We're all one. We're all lights. And we come here to have an experience and not to learn lessons Abraham Hicks says, we're joy seeking a way to express itself, but we've got lost with religious and all this other kind of focus on negativity all the time. We forgot that we came here to have fun, to love each other, to do things that enhance each other's life, to joy. I remember being a child and somebody telling me, wipe that smile off your face. What are you smiling about? I mean, that's really sad. When you think about it,
Yeah, there was one of those angels, right, that came to teach you that lesson. Like, okay, first I will show you the wrong way of living, and then remind you who you are.
Right. So, I think that we're all here helping each other evolve, and we're going to, if you read, the Good News Network, there's a lot of wonderful, amazing, incredible things environmentally, between people, just all sorts of stuff that's healing the planet that people are totally unaware of unless they go. I mean, there's now hundreds and hundreds of stories they can go through. They have animal heroes, people heroes. I just push all, I want to read all the stories about everything. But there's a lot of good stuff that people are evolving, but it's I don't focus on I see that because I'm not focused on the negative. I don't watch any news. I don't listen to news in the car. I changed all my songs, all my playlists only have happy, inspiring songs. There's no sad songs, no angry songs, none of that stuff is because I think I'm affected by everything. So
And we are. This is might be another concern of mine. A lot of times I see people around me, my family members, and even myself trying to attach or to search for feel good situations, always trying to push away, what's we call negative, and always trying to be under the light instead of, being in silent or in the dark at moments.
well, can you give me an example of what you're talking about? I'm not quite grasping.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a lot of this pursuit of happiness. So a lot of times we are doing this, we're pushing away what doesn't feel right, doesn't feel good in order to attract, to pursue things that makes us feel good. The subject we have been talking about, changing the world, changing people around us. So we feel better. So we are more comfortable in this body, in this world, in this place, that reality that we're in. And I think this is might be one of the issues, like in really getting to the point of the deeper understanding of life, that this is the experience, and the experience has everything. Everything. It just doesn't really exclude anything. I feel like it's just being in between, experiencing life at its fullest. Everything without discrimination, without fear. And that is the highest understanding of what life is and the purpose is, and to embrace it all.
Well, we both, can be saying it using different words. I learned being peace with it, being at peace with what is, was part of unconditional love. To me, since I'm unconditionally loving, there's no condition that's going to anger me or upset me so I'm in that place of being at peace with what is. One of the last judgments I let go of was my judgment about my body and feeling guilty about even eating lettuce. I didn't realize it was an unconscious thing that I'd been on so many diets and everything else. But you can be at peace with it. I don't know. Maybe you can be at peace with what is without being unconditionally loving. I don't know. I don't like when I fell on the floor, for example. I heard that notice, and the thing is, the little stool was next to my feet, and I didn't remember that it had this little stuff on the bottom that it won't move, to be safe. So I sort of thought I could push it out of the way when I turned to go to the refrigerator, but I couldn't. It didn't move, and I fell over it. When I landed on the floor hard, and I weigh a lot, I was holding 3 glass jars in my arms, big canning jars. And I hit the ground and they went shooting across one was between my chest, which bruised my chest, and the other 2 shot. And I looked around and my first comment was, thank you, God, that none of them broke. That was my first comment. And I felt my ankle and I looked at it and it was already dark blue. And I said, well, I better get healing to my ankle. And I got up and I went and I sat and I started, doing my own healing work on my ankle. I never once said, why was I so stupid? Why did I do this? God, why didn't I listen to, I just didn't even go there because I'm not going to judge myself anymore. Look, I heard, how many times did your parents tell you something? And you go against it with them. My parents don't know what the hell they're talking about, And oh yeah, they did. That was a good thing they told you. No, you just you stop beating yourself up because that's why I say it's important to love yourself first. Because when you stop beating yourself up first, and you keep loving yourself, you aren't reacting and beating somebody else up because you're loving yourself first. You go, oh, well, I've done that. Well, I've done something similar. Well, I can sort of empathize with them. There's a difference between empathize and compassion. I empathize too much because I would take it all on. It's a super sensitive person. Compassion is understanding somebody, but empathy is like the Native Americans walking in somebody else's shoes. Somebody who's suicidal. I totally get that. I've been there. I mean, I can understand it. So it's the more you love yourself without conditions, the more you empathize with other people. So I'm at a point, it's taken me a long time, but when I fell over, I didn't beat myself up. I said, thank you. No broken glass. Wow. That could have been a horrible mess with 3 huge jars full of stuff. And I would have been laying on broken glass. That's where I went. I just like, what am I grateful for in this moment? That's what I like, what can I celebrate right now? What can I celebrate? What was like, DeWitt Jones, The Habit of Celebration, National Geographic sent him out. He thought it was going to be so hard to work for them for years. And they said, no, we want you to go out and find out what you can celebrate today.
Wow.
So I have this jar and I try every day on a little, Post-it note I fold over the top. I write down the date and what I can celebrate today, what I'm so happy about. And I put it in this jar. And at the end of the year, on December 23rd, I pour them all out on the desk and I read through all those little notes so I can remember all these things I celebrated during the year that I forgot about.
Wow. It's just incredibly wonderful to hear this from another human being. Thank you so much, Morgine, for being there.
Yeah, you say, so just know when you're celebrating, you can go, I have hot water in my house. I have electricity. I have food to eat. The sun came up today. I've got clothes to wear. There's so many things that you can celebrate even when you don't think you can celebrate there, because there's a lot of people that don't have those things. I don't have any cell phone service where I live. My internet speed the other night was 0.47. You could just be happy for fast internet. I celebrate I have fast internet. Oh my God,
That's cute. I have just a few questions to ask you. Whatever comes to mind. What is your greatest joy?
My greatest joy is my connection to my source, to all of life, to the feeling I get, when I'm in meditation or I'm sitting out in nature or I'm sitting by the ocean, my connection to what I consider all that is, all of life. I feel so much more alive and I feel loved and cherished and adored and I feel connected to everything in the universe as I know it.
What is another word for healing?
Love.
Love. Yeah. How do you define success?
I don't like to use the term anymore, like success and failure. I would just say you had something that you really wanted to do and you achieved doing it.
Whatever it is, right?
Like whatever that is, whether you wanted to learn how to ski or you wanted to master your computer or you just wanted to finish reading a book and you had this big thick book and you just I did it. It took me a year, but I finished that. That's a success. And I think it's a personal thing. To me, it's more personal than having somebody else judge you by what they consider whether you're a success or not. Like, to me, earning a certain amount of money or, being able to give a talk in front of people, whatever, those are arbitrary things that somebody else can't judge you as to whether you're a success or not. We do, but I think that that's not a good way to measure success. I think it's a personal thing.
Right. What was the hardest lesson to learn about yourself?
That I wasn't accepting myself as I was. I wasn't accepting myself, my weight and that kind of stuff and my sensitivity and all that. I wasn't loving myself as I was.
What is to be strong?
I don't know, because I try to, that's a dualistic thinking. There's strong and weak. So again, it's a personal thing. Like a willow tree is strong because it bends in the wind, whereas you could say an oak tree is one of the strongest woods. Like, what does it mean to be strong? I don't think I can answer that because then I'd have to say, what does it mean to be weak? And just in the moment, it doesn't, I think, somebody else would look at me and say, I'm strong because I can love without conditions. I cannot be angry at somebody and I'm just at peace with where they are in the moment. And a lot of people would say that that's strong, from the outside. I'm just not sure in the moment how to answer that.
Yes. Are you afraid to die, to lose the body?
No, absolutely not. Like I've talked to animals for over 20 years, been an animal communicator and communicate to nature, and animals aren't afraid to die. They just know they go into spirit and come back as another animal again. So I've communicated enough with my own relations and friends who passed on and read near-death experiences that have absolutely no fear of death whatsoever.
So if you knew you would die soon, would you change anything about yourself or the way you live?
Yeah. So I'd probably take what money I've left in the bank and do a few things, that I haven't done. I mean, if I knew for sure, I was going to die in a month, I would probably take, my money out and see some things I wanted to see and do some things because I wouldn't need the money to pay bills, 6 months from now. So I'd have more experiences and go visit a few places I've wanted to visit. I've always wanted to swim with humpback whales. So as I have for some reason, when I see them, on the screen and everything, I always cry. So I seem to have some kind of really deep connection with them, for example.
Hmm. What kind of existence do you believe after we lose the body?
Well, I think we go into spirit and we don't remember anything negative. We only remember, the most beautiful experiences of our lives. And I don't know everything that goes on, but we have experiences with other people and other beings, who are in spirit and decide, what we want to do next, what our next experience is. Because when we're in spirit and we're like, 100% joy, love, we're ready for the next Indiana Jones adventure. Well, I'm going to be born without arms and legs this time. Watch me. Really? Are you crazy? No, I want to see what it's, that we have this insatiable desire to experience new things, and we have this optimism that Seth describes by Jane Roberts, that we always know that eventually everything's going to turn out okay. I'm going to die and come again, and it's okay. It doesn't matter. And we have this inner guidance, and we're very optimistic when we come here. And like the animals are all optimistic. They don't, like a cat catches the mouse, the soul leaves. The mouse is just, the cat's playing with the body without its other, it doesn't, the animal that's being eaten does not experience pain. But we look at it from our human experience and we judge so many things. Like we have all these things in our way because we won't, just like Seth used to say, you'd learn more about nature if you just watched it rather than dissecting it and killing it and trying to figure it out. It says, for instance, a spider. He says a spider loves building webs. It's creative. It's so much fun. It never gets mad when somebody, a deer walks through it. It says, but your scientists assume the only reason a spider builds a web is because it catches bugs. It's totally surprised it catches bugs. Wow, I caught a bug. How exciting. Yum, 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 yum. Like I said, it does it for the joy, but you can't believe that animals in nature do anything for the sheer joy of the experience. So, talking to animals is just like, and nature is like a soul different things because they're so in love with life. And dying is not something they fear. They don't even, like, I was an animal communicator. I had all these clients that come to me. The other animal communicator was trying to tell them to tell their animal not to go on the road and show them run over by a car. Well, the animal goes, okay, I just go into a new life. I had to teach him to see the animal going to the sidewalk, turning around and coming to the house, to show them how to stay in their yard rather than try to make them scared of dying, because they're not afraid of dying. They're so alive all the time. You watch these mothers push these baby birds out of this nest, thousands of feet up, and the bird flies because there's this optimism that everything's like monarch butterfly. They go where they've never been before. Millions and millions. They've never been to this place they're flying to before. And yet they make it. And even if some of them drop down, the same thing with bird migrations. They're like optimistic. And we have lost, nature is such a mirror for us of what life was meant to be. We've lost this childlike optimism. If you look at Jesus, all these people, what did they say? Be like little children. Be like little children. They tell us that all the time, because little children don't judge you. They don't care what color you are. They don't care if you're wealthy or poor. They just love you. My son was like 3 years old, and I had got my first haircut, and the lady was flash chested. And Andy goes to me. He's sitting on a chair, next to me while I'm having my hair. He goes, Mommy, how come she doesn't have any of those? Pointing to my face. And everybody laughed. I mean, they're just like so It wasn't judgmental. It was just an innocent little question. And I come to get my hair cut.
Observation.
The lady just loved it. She goes, see, I'm the lady who doesn't have any of those.
Right, without any judgment, right? Just that's beautiful.
And they're just like, and that's what we were meant to grow up and be that way our whole life. Parents tried, they think they're doing good and helping us by telling us what to be afraid of and what to trust and what not to trust and who to love and who not to love. And it conditions us. We get conditioned.
What are 3 things about life you know for sure?
That I believe that unconditional love is the foundation from which everything emerged, that everything was created, that I'm always connected to my source, or God or all that is because I'm, mostly spirit incarnated in a physical body, and that I'm connected to all of life.
Before you read the poem, where can the audience find information about you, your work, writings, products, services, projects?
Well, my website with my writing is my name, morginejurdan.com, MorgineJurdan. And then my animal communication website is communications, that's with an S, communicationswithlove.com, and peacefulpetpassing.com. That's for helping animals with end of life. And if anybody has a lost animal, I have a findalostpetresources.com that I put all the resources in case people have lost animals so they could find many resources in one place if they've got a missing animal.
Wonderful. It has been a meaningful conversation. Fun. A lot of fun, too. I call it spiritual fun. That was fun.
Me too.
The poem. Thank you.
Okay. It's called I Am the Magic and the Birds Singing. I am the magic and the birds singing. I am the colors in the rainbow. I color the sky with my radiance. I fill the forest with my loam. I am the mountains meeting the sky all day long. For in one drop of water, for in one grain of sand, in one cell of my body, the world is made whole again. As I breathe, I take in life and I let it go. My hair, my skin, my breath fall upon the earth, composting into soil, eaten by worms and bugs, eaten by animals and birds living in trees, fertilizing the tree with their excrement, and the tree growing fruit I eat, eating myself again and again, becoming whole and being it all. I'm the beginning, I'm the end, without an end. The deepest feeling anyone has, the deepest love, the deepest pain, the deepest longing, the peace beyond transcendence, bliss, anguish, terror, fear, love, they're all me, they're all mine, all divine, all that I am. There's no richness I cannot have. There's no pain I cannot feel. There's no lines, no divisions, no time, no separation. I come from a place that remembers it all and into which all life flows because love is all there is. And in the moment of the true reflection, I fall down and weep in the arms of myself.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your presence.
Thank you for asking me.
Thank you so much again. Bye for now.
Have a beautiful day.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Morgine Jurdan, please visit her website, morginejurdan.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. I want to thank the Patreon members, Lawrence McGrath, Mark Basden, Terry Clayton, and Aidan Vickrock. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.